begun.
Thank you. I didn't expect the band's men to notice my escape so quickly. I tried to hide here in the woods, but there wasn't time. And now I'm a dead man.
I tried to help.
You were there in Ostagar. You know how things went. For me, it was either this, or die in some darkspawn's belly, or be hung as a deserter.
You deserted?
I dare say most people think the same of you and me, if not worse.
I fled the battlefield when Loghain betrayed us. I abandoned my men, and they died. And Cailan with them. He was my king, my friend, maker. All that time in Ban Loren's prison. And I couldn't stop thinking about all they suffered that one dark night at Ostagar.
It's not your fault they died.
I know. Even had Loghain's men not turned their backs on us, the Darkspawn were too many. Even Cailan, for all his bravado, knew there would be no victory at Ostagar. The king entrusted me with the key to the royal arms chest. If anything were to happen to him, he said, it was vital I deliver it to the wardens.
Do you still have this key?
The Maker has a sense of humor, doesn't he? I suppose it's for the best, however. Had I kept it, it would be in Ban Loren's hands by now.
Why am I not surprised? Is there someone else we should be bringing back from the brink of death instead?
I was afraid. I thought I would lose it on the battlefield, so I stashed it in the camp. Please, it's probably still there.
You don't think the Darkspawn found it?
I hope not. Would they know how to work the lock, even if they did? The key's behind a loose stone at the base of a statue. I'll draw a map for you, so you'll know where to search.
You'll be taking me along, won't you? Call me sentimental, but I left behind some dark spawn that really deserve a sword through the middle.
It is vital that the king's documents do not fall into the wrong hands. As for Marik's sword, it is too powerful to be pawed at by those monsters. Same for the king's other arms and armor. And if you happen to find Cailan's body, see it off. He was our king. He shouldn't be left to rot amidst the Darkspawn's filth.
More dark. Shall we go? What now?
Judging by these documents, it's a pity we hadn't placed more trust in Orlais and less in the king's own father-in-law.
I don't know what to say about a man who leaves such a blade behind.
Forgive us, my king. Once we flushed the Darkspawn from their holes and bought ourselves some time, we'll be back to see you to the Maker.
I shall do it. Keep ahead. It is begun. Shall we?
They left him here to rot. We need to do something.
He was our king. He deserves a pyre.
He was a good man who hoped too much and died too young. He deserves what little honor we can afford to grant him.
You are a true warrior and worthy of respect.
So you said this Arl Eamon raised you.
Oh, did I say that? I meant that dogs raised me. Giant slobbering dogs from the Anderfels. A whole pack of them, in fact.
Really? That must have been tough for them.
Well, they were flying dogs, you see. Surprisingly strict parents, too. And devout Andrastians to boot.
And these dogs sold you to the Chantry, I take it.
Oh, there you go, listening to me again. You'd think you'd have gotten past that already. I ended up in the Chantry, sure, but I didn't start there. Let's see, how do I explain this? I'm a bastard. And before you make any smart comments, I mean the fatherless kind. My mother was a serving girl in Redcliffe Castle who died when I was very young. Arl Eamon wasn't my father, but he took me in anyhow and put a roof over my head. He was good to me, and he didn't have to be. I respect the man, and I don't blame him anymore for sending me off to the Chantry once I was old enough.
Why did he send you off to the Chantry?
Arl Eamon eventually married a young woman from Orlais, which caused all sorts of problems between him and the king because it was so soon after the war. But he loved her. Anyhow, then you, Arlessa, resented the rumors which pegged me as his bastard. They weren't true, but of course they existed. The Arl didn't care, but she did. So off I was packed to the nearest monastery at age 10, just as well. The Arlessa made sure the castle wasn't a home to me by that point. She despised me.
What an awful thing to do to a child.
Maybe. She felt threatened by my presence, I can see that now. I can't say I blame her. She wondered if the rumors were true herself, I bet. I remember I had an amulet with Andraste's holy symbol on it. The only thing I had of my mother's. I was so furious at being sent away, I tore it off and threw it at the wall and it shattered. Stupid, stupid thing to do. The Arl came by the monastery a few times to see how I was, but I was stubborn. I hated it there, and blamed him for everything. And eventually, he just stopped coming.
You were young.
All I know is that the Arl is a good man, and well loved by the people. He also was King Caelan's uncle, so he has a personal motivation to see Loghain pay for what he did. Anyway, that's really all there is to the story.
Why have you remained a Templar if you hate the Chantry?
Have you seen the uniform? It's not only stylish, but well made. I'm a sucker for good tailoring.
Oh? I don't think I've ever seen you wearing it.
I keep it hidden under my pillow. Sometimes I'll take it out just so I can hug it fondly and remember the good old days. Brings a tear to the eyes, you know.
Do all Templars make these jokes, or just you?
Oh, you know, between all the guilt and the hours spent in solemn prayer, any good Templar or priest is just bursting to tell a few good jokes when the opportunity arises. You don't really want to know about my being a Templar, do you? It's really quite boring.
Then make up something more exciting.
You know, I like the way you think. You're all right. If you're really curious, then I'll tell you. The truth of the matter is that I did hate going to the monastery. The initiates from poor families thought I put on airs, while the noble ones called me a bastard and ignored me. I felt like Arl Eamon had cast me off, unwanted, and I was determined to be bitter. But I took some solace in the training itself, I guess. I was actually quite good at it.
What did you enjoy about the training?
The education, mostly, but also the discipline. You need to have a disciplined mind in order to use the abilities we have. It was difficult, but rewarding. I never really felt at home anywhere, though, until I joined the Grey Wardens. And Duncan felt my Templar abilities might be useful for when we encountered Darkspawn magic. so I kept it up. What about you? Do you have anywhere you consider home?
My home was taken over by Arl Howe.
Right. Stupid of me to ask. I'm sorry. We won't always be traveling like this, you know. Once the war is over, once the Blight is... well, a time will come when we'll have to think about having a real home again. Though that seems like a far ways off. And I suppose the Grey Wardens are gone for good. Either way.
They can be rebuilt.
I suppose you're right. We can create new Grey Wardens, but we'll never get back those we lost. I wonder if it would ever feel the same. Anyhow, now I've sidetracked us. We'd better get back to what we're supposed to be doing right now.
Do you know anything about the Dailish?
I have heard a little about how the elves gained their freedom from the Tevinter Imperium. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, the elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Shatan, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Shatan was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in the land of their own.
It didn't last.
The elves lived in the Dales for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe it. The chantry declared a wholly exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dailish.
You are not quite as callow as I thought. That is unexpected.
Thanks, I guess?
You're welcome.
So will you tell me now why you were caged?
I caged myself. A weak mind is a deadly foe, as you are no doubt aware.
What do you mean by a weak mind?
That is complicated. I told you before that I was sent here. I was not sent alone. I came to your lands with 7 of the Beresad, my brothers, to seek answers about the Blight. We made our way across the Ferelden countryside without incident, seeing nothing of the threat we were sent to observe. Until the night we camped by Lake Calenhad. They came from everywhere. The earth beneath our feet, the air above us. Our own shadows harbored the darkspawn. I saw the last of the creatures cut down, too late. I fell.
That sounds like what happened to me at Ostagar.
I heard the stories of Ostagar. Your kith stood their ground when others fled. No one can do more than that. I don't know how long I lay on the battlefield among the dead, nor do I know how the farmers found me. I only know that when I woke I was no longer among my brothers, and my sword was gone from my hand.
You probably dropped it on the battlefield.
Perhaps. I searched for it, and when that failed I asked my rescuers what had become of it.
And then?
I killed them. With my bare hands. I did. I knew they didn't have the blade. They had no reason to lie to me. I panicked. Unthinking, I struck them down.
It's only an object, Sten. You can get another sword.
Do your people have no souls as we know them? Convenient for you. That sword was made for my hand alone. I have carried it from the day I was set into the Beresad. I was to die wielding it for my people. Even if I could cross Ferelden and Tevinter unarmed and alone to bring my report to the Arishok, I would be slain on sight by the Antam. They would know me as soulless, a deserter. No soldier would cast aside his blade while he drew breath.
Couldn't you search for it?
If I knew where to look, it would be in my hand now.
Where did you fight the Darkspawn?
Near Lake Calenhad.
Don't worry, we'll find it.
Perhaps those words are empty, but thank you all the same.
You and your friends are formidable folk, indeed. It's good to have you along on the road.
Have you heard any rumors?
Some folks aren't happy about Tyrn Loghain being named regent. There are rumors he had something to do with the king's death. Isn't that the most ridiculous thing you ever heard? The Darkspawn killed him, sure enough. If Tyrn Loghain couldn't save the king from that inn, then nobody could. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is.
Tell me, are you really Flemeth's daughter?
I assume you were actually asking whether Flemeth herself gave birth to me. Truly, I do not know. I once asked Flemeth that very question, and she merely laughed at me. 'Tis not inconceivable that she could capture a chastened man, or perhaps change to a more attractive form to attract him willingly. I find it more difficult to imagine her with child.
She was not always as old as she is now, was she?
As a matter of fact, I remember her being younger once. She had black hair, much like my own, long and lustrous. But how could that be if she is centuries old? Has she become wizened only recently? Or are the tales of her legend only that, and nothing more? I do know the tales of Flemeth having many daughters, even though I have never met another. And Flemeth has always treated me as her blood.
Does that mean you love her?
What an odd thing to say! Why must love enter into the equation? Flemeth taught me everything I needed to learn. How to survive, the meaning of power, the truth of men. If other mothers do not teach these things, then I believe them the lesser.
I suppose that's true.
You suppose it's true? 'Tis true. Take yourself. You do not honestly desire such things from me, do you? 'Tis better to be free of such cloying and cluttering delusions as love.
Why limit yourself?
I do not consider it a limitation. Not leaping into a burning building also happens to be an experience best avoided. I tire of this discussion. Let us move on, shall we?
It speaks.
I have some more questions.
It doesn't have better things to do.
How did you end up in Honleith? Do you remember?
Oh yes, that I remember quite well. My former master, the Mage Wilhelm, he brought me. As I recall, he had acquired some position with whatever lord ruled the land. I, being little more than a glorified possession at the time, was brought along. Oh, how he enjoyed impressing the villagers with me. Gollum, snarl at that villager there, be fearsome. And of course, I would have to do it.
I would have thought you'd enjoy scaring humans.
I'd have happily stomped them all into paste, and then ripped down their little houses and stomped on them, too. In fact, after 30 years of watching them, I'd do it twice. What I didn't like was being ordered to do it. Dangled in front of those frightened morons like some scary thing. Once I was a statue, it took those villagers years before they'd even approach me. The first one to actually work up the nerve to touch me urinated himself. Ugh.
But why were you out in front of the tower?
That is where Wilhelm kept me. He wanted me out in the open where I could be frightening like a scarecrow. I was supposed to watch for thieves. Pah! Plus, his wife didn't want me indoors. She said there wasn't room for me. Hag.
His wife?
I was once larger, 10 feet tall. Then the loathsome hag complained that I couldn't fit through the doors. So the mage had me shrunk down. Can it believe it? And she still wanted me out.
How does someone shrink a golem?
With a chisel. And a lot of nerve.
You didn't like this Wilhelm, I take it.
He did love using that control rod. Fondled it so much, his wife actually threatened to throw it in the lake. Ha! I would have liked to have seen that. Which reminds me, where did it find the rod? Did it pay a great deal for it?
Oh yes, a fortune in fact.
Good. Clearly, I am worth it.
Do you remember anything before Honleith?
I traveled with the mage. He did a lot of traveling, I remember that. But where we went, it is rather fuzzy. I remember great battles, fighting many humans long ago. They were all very soft and squishy. And before that, No, there are only images. I was somewhere dark.
Just how old are you, exactly?
I have no idea. Wilhelm used to brag that the dwarves stopped making golems centuries ago. I do not age as you soft creatures do. Sadly, my memory is no better. Plus, I get bored and stop paying attention.
You watched that village day and night for years.
I do not sleep, so yes, and I thank it for reminding me. Try to imagine, if it will, what it would be like to be surrounded by nothing but boring peasants, all oblivious to it.
Yeah, that would be rather horrid.
And then there were the birds. A whole village full of pigeons and ravens and sparrows all perching on me day in and day out.
Sounds a little messy.
Those foolish villagers would spread birdseed near me, drawing the birds, because they thought having birds perch on me was quaint. Quaint! If there hadn't been the occasional kind soul to scour me clean, I don't care to discuss this anymore. I've watched a lot of humans in my time. It should be aware that I've decided that it is not much like any of them.
Aw, thanks, Shale.
Surely it must come from some superior lineage, yes? Some breed of flesh creature that has decided to elevate its genetic stock above its natural shortcomings?
My father was the Terran of High Ever.
Oh, then that must be it. I knew there had to be some reason, it being a human and all. I would appreciate if it didn't spread around that I said anything. Humans might start to get the wrong idea. They might start thinking their race is not completely hopeless.
And we wouldn't want that.
Indeed. Can it imagine the horror? Oh. Now, let us crush something into a fine paste before it starts to think I've gone all soft. Perish the thought.